Hello everybody, my name is Dustin Cormier. This is another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today we're going to be continuing the last pieces of our reading from our Nakshatra Sutras discussion. This in particular discusses the deity of Mula Nakshatra, and this is what we call Nirrti. We've learned a little bit from our usual 27 Nakshatra Sutras video. Now this is going to give us a little bit extra information on the deity and also therefore the nakshatra itself. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this series. So this comes from the divine forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas. It's written by somebody named Radhe, who is, we have to, as I always say, she's a sidereal trained jyotishi. She's a sidereal Vedic astrologer. Of course, not all Vedic astrologers are sidereal. I'm a tropical Vedic astrologer. So when we read her work, it's good to take certain things, especially when we read about the native, as she describes it. It's good to take it with a grain of salt. But her work digs into the character of the deity in the Vedas, regardless of tradition, that the deities of the nakshatras exist in the Vedas beyond even astrology. And that's what we're learning about in this video and in this video series. So strap in, make yourself comfortable. We are now going to be digging into Nirrti, which is the deity of Mula Nakshatra. In our book, this occurs at chapter 19. Nirrti, Mula, is the barren goddess of perdition. We begin with a quote from the Taittiriya Samhita, where we read, "Seek, O Nirrti, the man who poureth not offerings nor sacrifices. The road of the thief and robber may thou followest. Seek another than us that is on thy road. Homage be to thee, O Nirrti, O goddess." It's Taittiriya Samhita, chapter 4. So we can see already that one of the first oblations that we hear is a call for Nirrti to not be close to us, to go towards those who deserve this malignant reckoning. And this brings us to section 1. Malignant Nirrti and her death-inflicting noose. Imagine a deep, dark abyss where danger and destruction lurk around every corner. A place where only demons dare to roam. This is the abode of arguably the most feared of all Rudras. This is the haunt of Nirrti, a goddess of death, decay, and misfortune. Nirrti devours the elderly, sick, and destitute. She stalks the sacrificial grounds, targeting unsuspecting patrons and shackling victims with her death-inflicting iron noose. To thee, sharp-pointed Nirrti, pay homage. Loosen thou the binding fetters wrought of iron. Encompassed by death which comes in 1,000 manners, here art thou fastened to her iron pillar. And that comes from the AV is, you'll have to excuse me. That comes from the Atharva Veda Samhita, the Chanakya Samhita. Chapter 6 of the Atharva Veda. Now, reciting powerful mantras, Brihaspati, lord of Pushya Nakshatra, seizes the noose from Nirrti's grip and releases her victim, a priest performing his sacrificial duties. Nirrti, the goddess of destruction, is lurking with her cords, her noose, thinking to cast them round the Hotar priest. To prevent this, Brahaspati saw this Dvipada verse, this 2-metered mantra. By its words, may she not be angry with us, nor visit us with destruction. He wrested from Nirrti's hands her cords and put them down. That comes from the Aitareya Brahmana. The fate of those less fortunate in life is governed by the random whim of this goddess. Considered most inauspicious is the newborn birthed under her unlucky star, Mula. And that's a quote that comes again from the Atharva Veda Samhita. So the parents of such a child implore the gods to protect their baby from Nirrti's harm. Indicative of her perilous ways, the ancient appellation for Mula is Vrikritau, the two that uproot, disfigure, or mutilate. The two, it is said, according to the author, the two are a reference to Mula's 2 primary stars, both belonging in the sidereal Scorpionus constellations, which are said to be located in the stinger of the sidereal scorpion. Again, that's a sidereal reference, because in tropical, there is no actual scorpion in the sky. But I digress. This goddess of death is likened to the Avashta, a tree whose branches strangle other trees, resulting in a slow but inevitable death. Her descriptives include sharp-edged Tikshnadhara, darkness Tamaska, misfortune Papa, and corruption Dusti. Despite her horrific portrayal, Scripture refers to Nirrti at times as Mother Earth. But she is not the green, lush, nurturing aspect of Earth. Before Prajalpati created vegetation, the surface of the earth was bald, void of food and water. This Mother Earth was unable to support life. Prajalpati sacrificed to Agni with an oblation of ghee, and suddenly plants, trees, and brush covered the earth. Nirrti is mother to that early aspect of earth which lacked nourishment and hence life. Indeed, Scripture assigns Nirrti all infertile lands, cracks and crevices in the ground, caverns, craters, and hollow spaces. That comes from, I believe, the Shatapatha Brahmana. She is mother to the inevitable destruction, decay, and dearth of earth. That's also a quote from Shatapatha Brahmana. All evil forces of the world are assigned to the lap of this goddess. And that comes from the Rig Veda, Mandala 6, chapter 74. Yet, despite her destitute and sterile outer nature, Nirrti is every bit as sacred as the other divine forces. Deep within the bowels of Nirrti, of Mother Earth, hellish temperatures and extreme pressures transform ordinary carbon into the most precious of all gems, the diamond. Sometimes it takes an extreme force like goddess Nirrti to awaken us to perfection, to the discovery of the most perfect of all diamonds dangling within the cave of our hearts. Beautiful poetry. And the misfortunes of the world, of Earth itself, exists in order for karma to be assuaged, to be experienced, to be rawly portrayed, that it might come into the enlightenment, the samadhi, the truth that it's trying to be. Mother Earth's pressure is a part of that perfection of the raw soul into a diamond. So this is not necessarily a terribleness that is terrible. Now let's go on. A deity, who lords over the Punarvasu Nakshatra, who is also referred to as Mother Earth, is the flip side of Nirrti. She is all that Earth has to offer in the way of love, protection, and nourishment. A deity cradles humanity and the gods in her lap. Of the divine forces, only Yama and Nirrti are famed as having birds for messengers. Gonda notes, birds and their cries are often regarded as ominous, portending misfortune or destruction, the dove being a messenger of Yama, and the crow playing a part in Nirrti rites. That comes from a book called The Vedic Morning Litany, Pratarunuvaka, page 5. Now elsewhere, Nirrti and Yama share the dove as a messenger of death. And we hear a quote, "O ye gods, if the dove, dispatched as the messenger of Nirrti, has come here seeking us out." And that comes from the Atharva Veda, Book 7, Chapter 27. Now lastly, mention should be made of Nirrti's sacrificial direction. Each direction holds a particular web or matrix of energy, conducive to certain physical and supernatural manifestations. Nirrti's sacrificial direction is the intermediary quarter of the southwest. The southwest lies between the south, ruled by the Pitris, the ancestors, and the west, ruled by Varuna, the god of retribution. Physical pain and mental anguish and suffering are consigned by the priests to the southwest region. Now, next section, we're looking at Nirrti's ceremonial role in the divine yajna ceremonies of classical Vedic lore. Of course, the yajnas are sacrifice ceremonies, which often portrays an external sacrifice, but whose symbolism contains, almost like a book, all of the divine consciousness of the nakshatras and of the Vedas. This is one of the ways that the Vedic people used to continue to hold the knowledge of the Vedas in the long ago days, before writing was invented, or before writing was a common and easy invention. Not only were things done by erudition, by rote memorization of mantras, etc., but also the Vedic yajnas were a key placeholder of divine knowledge, as well as being a ceremonial divine rite in itself. So we read Nirrti's ceremonial role. In the construction of the fire altar, the Agni Kayana, a sling resembling Nirrti's noose is crafted. The priests place the sling in a hole or cleft, the abode of Nirrti, in the southwest direction, which is Nirrti's direction, away from the sacrificial grounds. Here, 3 black altar bricks, for black is Nirrti's form, are likewise deposited. The priests beseech this goddess to prey upon those more deserving. Seek him who pours not, offers not oblation, following the going of the thief and the robber. This is thy way. Leave us and seek some other. To thee, O goddess Nirrti, we be homage. And that comes from the Vajasaneyi Madhyandina Samhita, chapter 12. Thus, in hopes of restricting Nirrti to this locale, the priests return to the sacred fire without looking back. In similar fashion, sacrificial oblations are offered to Nirrti in exchange for her promise not to bind the patron with her iron fetters. Her sacrificial pap is the husks of black rice, the inferior part of the rice grain. Nirrti's other oblations include liquor, raw meat, fish, and sour fruit. Further, burnt offerings belong to Nirrti. That which is too burnt belongs to Nirrti. That which is not cooked to Rudra. And that which is cooked belongs to the gods. That comes to the Taittiriya Samhita. Now the author gives a footnote here that says, the nature of Nirrti's sacrificial offerings is similar to that of Rudra's. For example, Rudra receives the remnants of the sacrificial offerings and what is uncooked. Nirrti receives the discarded part of grain, the chaff, as well as the burnt offerings. Now there is but a single ceremony in which Nirrti is invited as an active participant. The occasion is the Rajasuya, the anointment of a king. After consecration, the king ceremoniously swears in his 11 jewels or court. So after the king is consecrated, he ceremoniously swears in his 11 jewels or court officials. Each court position is equated to a particular devata whose nature best represents the role and responsibilities of that post. And you can see a little bit more on the video that I've made on Hasta Nakshatra and its deity Savitri. Here, during the king's consecration ceremony, Nirrti holds the position of the barren or discarded wife, Parivrikriti, for she is the wife who is unable to birth a son for the king. When offering Nirrti a pap baked from the husk of black rice, the king recites, "This, O Nirrti, is thy share. Accept it graciously. Hail." For a wife that is without a son is possessed with Nirrti, and that's destruction and calamity. And whatever of Nirrti's nature there is in her, that he thereby propitiates. And thus Nirrti does not take possession of him while he is consecrated. So it makes sense that invoking her would be necessary. That comes from the Shatapatha Brahmana, chapter 5, book 5. The patron who desires a son is instructed to appease Nirrti and her nakshatra Mula with the following invitation and oblation verses. Invitation. May I obtain the favor of Mula, root, the nakshatra of Nirrti, and a progeny abounding in manly sons. Let Nirrti, the goddess of destruction, go away by a faraway path. May the nakshatra, united with cows and other domestic animals, be day meaning as bright as daylight, for me, the sacrificer. Oblation, being day and as bright as daylight, let the nakshatra which they call Mula establish us today in welfare. With my voice I drive away Nirrti. Let prosperity be for my progeny, let prosperity be for me. And that comes from the Taittiriya Brahmana, Book 3. Now, as the barren wife, Nirrti's counterpart at the Rajasuya is the chief wife, Mahishi, represented by Aditi. Aditi's offering is the standard karu and her dakshina, the sacrificial fee to the priest. Sorry, the grammar's a little funny here sometimes. So Aditi's offering is the standard karu, as well as what is called her dakshina. That's her sacrificial fee to the priest, which is, her dakshina is the nurturing, all-giving milch cow. Just like the milch cow, Aditi sustains all creatures on earth. Whereas in stark contrast, Nirrti's dakshina is a black, decrepit, and diseased cow. Now, Mula has an ancient appellation. The nakshatra Mula has an ancient name, and this is our next section. Mula's ancient appellation. What we read is that Mula Barhani is an ancient name for Mula, which Mula itself, remember, means root. So, in translation, Mula Barhani, an author named Bhattabhaskara, which is one of the old guys that do a commentary, who wrote their own Taittiriya Brahmana, one of the Brahmanas, and sort of has their commentary on it. So, when translating Mula Barhani, Bhattabhaskara refers to its scriptural meaning as Vriha Udyamana Udbarhana, which the author translates this as destruction through the effort of uprooting. He adds the following regarding Mula Barhani's foundation from above and below. We read that Nirrti is a sinful deity, malevolent. Of this uprooting deity, there are 3 stages. Above are the subjects obstructing and destroying all, one by one. In the middle of the self of time is a power, Shakti, of pulling up Barhana. Below are the objects breaking into pieces mercilessly and adversely, hurting and killing. If these 3 coincide, one is destroyed, being caught by death. That quote again comes from Bhattabhaskara Mishra, and that is his commentary on the Taittiriya Brahmana. Now, a group of plants tied together at their roots is the symbol for Mula. Interestingly, this nakshatra is propitiated in the Atharva Veda for the relief of kshetriya, a disease cured by anointing the body with a bundle of herbs that have been tied by their roots and soaked in ghee. Now, a translator of the Atharva Veda named Griffith provides the meaning of this word kshetriya. It is explained to be an inherited disease. It's not kshatriya, the warrior class. This is kshetriya with an E. And he explains that kshetriya is from kshetra, a word which means field. and as a neuter substantive means a chronic constitutional or hereditary disease derived from the mother's body, regarded as a productive field. So this means a disease rooted in the family lineage. Now that's a quote that comes from the Hymns of the Atharva Veda, Volume 1 by Griffith. Kshatriya also translates as incurable. Elsewhere in the Atharva Veda, we find the same notion. Twin stars of happy omen, named Vikratau, which is the Vedic appellation for Mula, the old Vedic name for Mula, have gone up. May they loosen of inherited disease the uppermost and lowest bond. It comes from the Atharva Veda. Now, the translators of the Surya Siddhanta offer another explanation for Mula's appellation, Mula Barhani. We would suggest that Mula may perhaps have been so named from its being considerably the lowest or farthest to the southward of the whole series of asterisms, and hence capable of being looked upon as the root out of which they, the nakshatras, had grown up to the heavens. That comes from the Surya Siddhanta. As a tropical Vedic astrologer, I want everybody to consider that there are underpinnings of, the Surya Siddhanta wasn't entirely in full awareness of the precession of the equinox. So the southern direction of Mula may have only been southernmost at the time 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, when the Surya Siddhanta was written. So that has the possible taint of the sidereal tradition inherent in it. I won't dwell on it because we're here to be hearing this author's words, but as a tropical Vedic astrologer, I invite you to keep this in mind. The directions are really a tropical thing. The sky doesn't really have any inherent direction. And that's why I'm saying that. Now, interestingly, taking issue with this interpretation, Rana and Kochar, who are other translators and interpreters of the Vedas, Rana and Kochar argue that Mula is so named due to its relative position to the Milky Way. Of the 27 nakshatras, Mula lies closest to the intersection of the Milky Way and the zodiacal belt, which is also known as the galactic equator and ecliptic. Now this is a quote on the meaning of the Mula Nakshatra, and that's a whole book by these two authors, Rana and Kochar. We read, "The entire ascribed range of the Mula Nakshatra is nicely intercepting the wide band of the Milky Way in a region where it appears to be most visibly dense. It is a point, or a nakshatra, on the ecliptic, where the moon and the planets were seen to cross the densest part of the Milky Way in a unique manner, i.e., to disappear into the dark bowels of the universe." Very insightful astronomical vision there. Now, next we have the Santikalpa for Mula and goddess Nirrti. It's our next chapter. The Shantikalpa Parishishta, a set of appeasement rites, embodies the sacrificial protocols for pacifying evil forces and averting the consequences of inauspicious omens. The proper Brahman gifts and fees for appeasing each nakshatra are specified in the Shantikalpa Parishishta. For example, the Dakshina for Mula, defined as the cruel nakshatra, is a bundle of plants tied together at their roots. Its Brahman fee is spirituous liquor together with food for non-Brahmanical women. A significant component of the Shantikalpa Parishishta is a Shanti ceremony for propitiating Nirrti. The ceremony is to be conducted at crossroads. As with Rudra, a crossroads is Nirrti's favorite venue, for black magic and curses are performed there. As well, the cremation ashes of an impure householder are buried at crossroads, and should a student break his vow of chastity, he must, on a new moon day, sacrifice at a crossroad to Nirrti. It's a footnote that comes from a book called Vedic Ritual, the Non-Solemn Rites. Very interesting. The crossroads should be located to the southwest, that is Nirrti's direction, of the village. Garbed in black, the officiating priest kindles a funeral fire in the dark of the night at such locale. A clay image of Nirrti, also garbed in black, is configured. She's offered black flowers and sacrificial oblations of liquor, sour gruel of fruits, fish, dog's tooth thorns, and raw meat. When making offerings, the priest recites various Atharva Veda stanzas, including the following: the tie that the divine Nirrti bound upon thy neck, and that was unreleasable, that do I untie for thee, in order for long life, splendor, and strength. That comes from the Atharva Veda. To continue another quote: thou in whose terrible mouth, i.e. the mouth of Nirrti, I make oblation, in order to the release of these bound ones. People think of thee as earth, but I know thee completely as perdition. Nirrti. And that's Atharva Veda, Book 6, Chapter 84. At the conclusion of Nirrti's Shanti ritual, the priest journeys to the banks of a river and discards his black garments in the water, replacing them with new white ones. As he turns away from the river and his discarded garment, the priest recites an Atharva Veda verse intended to guard against witchcraft and its practitioners. As the sun frees himself from depth of darkness and casts away the night and rays of morning, so I repel each baleful charm which an enchanter hath prepared. And, as an elephant shakes off the dust, I cast the plague or curse aside. And that comes from Atharva Veda, Book 10, Chapter 1. Now, as our final little chapter here, we've got a little discussion on Nirrti in the Puranas. That's our final little section here. Nirrti is portrayed in several post-Vedic texts as one of the 11 Rudras, including the Vayu and Matsya Puranas. Yet elsewhere, Nirrti is acclaimed as the wife of Mrityu, god of disease and death, or the wife of Adharma, that's unrighteousness and sin. That comes from the Markandeya Purana. And this quote here is going to come from the Mahabharata of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, Book 1. So this is from the Mahabharata. And Adharma, sin or vice, was born when creatures from want of food began to devour one another. And Adharma always destroys every creature. And Adharma hath Nirrti for his wife, whence the Rakshasas, who are called Nirritas, the offering of Nirrti, the offspring of Nirrti, that is. And she hath also 3 other cruel sons, always engaged in sinful deeds. They are Bhaya, it's fear, Mahabhaya, terror, and Mrityu, death, who is always engaged in slaying every created thing. Now, in the Vishnu Purana, Himsa, which is violence, is married to Adharma. They beget a son, Anrita, that's falsehood, and a daughter, Nirrti. Anrita and Nirrti intermarry and give birth to twin sons, Bhaya, which is fear, and Naraka, which is hell, as well as twin daughters, Maya, which is illusion, and Vedana, which is torture. In accordance with this Purana, these, the children of Nirrti, are called the inflictors of misery and are characterized as the progeny of vice, Adharma. They are all without wives or spouses, without prosperity, without the faculty to procreate. They are the terrific forms of Vishnu and perpetually operate as causes of the destruction of this world. Now, regardless of Nirrti's Puranic lineage, she lives up to her Vedic reputation as a devata to be feared and reverenced by all. Certainly descriptive of the negative character of the nakshatra on the whole, although we have to remember that even those who undertake the appellation and the birth of Nirrti and who have significant placements in the sign of the nakshatra of Mula have karma, just like bile sitting in one's liver that one has to throw up. Those born under strong emphasis of Mula Nakshatra play an important part in removing bile from their own soul and from the souls of those around them, although it might be a bit of a mess along the way. But the nakshatra character of a person is only the nakshatra character. You could have great things going on in a chart that allows you to remove this bile from your soul in this incarnation in an auspicious ways. You can't really pin somebody to have the negative quality of Nirrti or to be evil or anything like this just by one association in a nakshatra or in anything in astrology. You always got to take everything with confluence. So stay optimistic, or be what you got to be as a Mula person, or as somebody, if you're watching this for a Mula person. Always keep in mind that everything happens for a reason, and everything exists for a reason. Keep your eyes peeled. I've always got more stuff coming along in the world of how to rock astrology in our explanations of the 27 nakshatras. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend that you check out the Nakshatra Sutra video, where it goes into a bit more detail talking about the personality of the Mula native. Thanks so much for watching, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Keep your eyes peeled for more stuff coming out, and I'll see you next time.